The Senate chamber was charged with tension, the kind you can almost feel in your bones. This wasn't just another round of questions for a high-profile nominee. It was a showdown. Pam Bondi, the longtime Trump ally who built a reputation on fierce loyalty and sharp political instincts, was about to face a test that had nothing to do with her legal resume. The questions coming her way weren't about technical qualifications or courtroom victories. They were about loyalty, integrity, and the willingness to say one powerful word to the most powerful person in the country. It started almost lightly, with Senator Chuck Grassley offering her 3 words of advice: answer Grassley's letters. A chuckle moved through the room, but the smile didn't last long. Grassley pivoted quickly to the real issue.
Grassley, Ms. Bondi, if you're successful in your nomination, this Democrat would like to give you 3 words of advice. Answer Grassley's letters. You'll never hear the end of it if you don't. At issue, I believe, in this nomination hearing is not your competence nor your experience. At issue is your ability to say no. More than any other cabinet official, the Attorney General has to be prepared to put the Constitution first and even tell the President of the United States you're wrong. The political danger and personal costs of such a decision are well documented. You have only to ask former Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, whom Donald Trump sacked for lack of loyalty. And so I have 3 basic questions I'd like to ask you. Most Americans believe that central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was a peaceful transition of power. President Trump left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
Do you have any doubts that Joe Biden had the majority of votes, electoral votes, necessary to be elected president in 2020?
You know, Senator, all I can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course, that Joe Biden is president of the United States. But what I can tell you is what I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign, and I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much. You know, no one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
I think that question deserved a yes or no, and I think the length of your answer is an indication that you weren't prepared to answer yes. Have you heard the recording of President Trump on January 2nd, 2021, when he urged the Secretary of State of Georgia to, quote, find 11,780 votes and declare him the winner of that state?
No, I've heard about it through clips, but no, Senator, I've not heard it.
What was your reaction to President Trump making that call?
I would have to listen to the tape, Senator.
Well, the quote that I give you is exact. He said to the Georgia Secretary of State, find 11,780 votes.
Do you have the entire context of that call? I feel like it was much longer than that and may have been taken out of context.
It was an hour long.
Right.
And you can certainly listen to it. I hope you will. Every American should. As a former prosecutor, are you not concerned that the President of the United States called a state election official and asked him to find enough votes to change the results of the election?
Senator, I have not listened to the hour-long conversation, but it's my understanding that is not what he asked him to do.
You need to listen to it. Let me ask a third question. Do you believe that the January 6 rioters who've been convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned?
Senator, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, The pardons, of course, fall under the president. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
You also advise the president on pardons. That's part of your responsibility as Attorney General. And so I'm asking you, do you believe that those who've been convicted of the January 6th riot, violent assaults on our police officers, should be pardoned? That's a simple question.
So, Senator, I have not seen any of those files, of course. If confirmed and if asked to advise the president, I will look at each and every file. But let me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Let me ask you about your work as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners. You did not list your current position as a partner at the lobbying firm, nor the work you've done for your Ballard Partner clients, such as lobbying for the country of Qatar for $115,000 a month, and for corporate giants Amazon and Uber when you were asked about conflicts of interest. Why do you believe your work as a lobbyist does not constitute potential conflicts of interest?
Well, Senator, first, that was the amount my firm received. I believe multiple people represented the country of Qatar within my firm. My role, and I am very proud of the work that I did, it was a short time and I wish it had been longer for Qatar, was anti-human trafficking efforts leading into the World Cup, which is something I'd like to talk about later too. I was registered as FARA along with many members of my firm. That was the sole portion of my representation for Qatar. Now, if there are any conflicts with anyone I represented in private practice, I would consult with the career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision. I would also like to point out to you, I don't believe that I would be the first Attorney General who has represented and advocated for businesses in their past.
Of course not. The question is whether you will recuse yourself from any case involving your Ballard clients. One of those clients was the GEO Group, was it not?
GEO, yes.
A private prison company you lobbied for. It manages correctional institutions and detention facilities. The GEO Group has faced criticism for safety violations, inadequate health care, and poor management. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is GEO's largest source of revenue. Under the Trump administration, GEO stands to earn hundreds of millions of dollars by detaining immigrants if there is this mass deportation. Would you sense any conflict of interest if you're asked to judge the performance of this government contractor?
Senator, I will consult with the career ethics officials within the Department of Justice and make the appropriate decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You forgot to say that John's family was from South Carolina.
The upstate, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll give you a pass on that. From Anderson, by the way. So,
Whether Bondi would have the backbone to stand up to a president if he crossed the constitutional line. He didn't need to name names. Everyone in the room knew the history. Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, both former attorneys general under Trump, had paid the price for moments of defiance. Would Bondi meet the same fate if she dared to challenge a president? Senator Dick Durbin didn't waste time with small talk. His first question went straight for the political jugular. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election to Joe Biden? For most Americans, the answer is a simple yes. But for Bondi, whose political identity is tightly tied to Trump's orbit, the question was a minefield. She acknowledged Biden was the president of the United States, and that there had been a peaceful transfer of power, but she avoided the direct phrasing of Trump lost. It was the kind of answer that seemed straightforward on the surface, but under the microscope, it was carefully constructed to leave room for interpretation. Durbin pressed again, asking if she had any doubts about Biden's electoral victory. Bondi replied that she accepted the results, but leaned into her personal observations from campaigning in Pennsylvania, alluding to many things she had seen. The problem: it wasn't the clear, direct confirmation Durbin was looking for. Her words felt like they were walking a tightrope, balancing between acknowledging reality and avoiding a soundbite that could alienate the political base that had supported her rise. Then came the infamous January 2nd, 2021 phone call. Trump, speaking to Georgia's Secretary of State, was recorded saying fined 11,780 votes. Durbin wanted her reaction. Bondi claimed she hadn't heard the full recording, only clips, and implied that context might change the perception of Trump's words. The senator was blunt. The quote was exact. She continued to suggest that the hour-long conversation might offer a different view. To the public, the call had long been framed as a blatant attempt to overturn an election result. Her reluctance to outright condemn it played like a slow-motion sidestep, an avoidance that was as noticeable as any direct answer. If that exchange felt evasive, what followed was equally telling. Durbin asked if she believed the January 6 rioters convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned. This was another chance for a decisive statement, one that would draw a line in the sand between supporting the rule of law and enabling political violence. Instead, Bondi said she'd review each case individually if asked by the president. She did condemn violence against law enforcement, but she avoided a direct no on pardons. For viewers hoping for moral clarity, the moment instead highlighted how carefully she was navigating political waters. From questions about democracy and presidential conduct, the hearing turned to Bondi's private sector work. Durbin brought up her position at Ballard Partners, a lobbying firm where she'd represented high-profile clients including the government of Qatar, Amazon and Uber. He zeroed in on the $115,000 a month contract with Qatar, a foreign government with a track record of influence building in Washington. Bondi emphasized that her role focused on anti-human trafficking efforts ahead of the World Cup, and she stressed that she would consult with ethics officials if conflicts arose. But the larger question hung in the air: can someone who's taken money to represent foreign governments and corporate giants be truly impartial when those interests intersect with U.S. law enforcement? This wasn't an isolated concern. It was part of a larger ongoing criticism of the revolving door between government service and lucrative lobbying work. The risk isn't just actual bias, it's the appearance of bias, the possibility that decisions could be swayed by past relationships or future career ambitions. Bondi, for her part, insisted she could separate her past work from her potential role as Attorney General. Durbin wasn't finished. He shifted to another client, the GEO Group, a private prison company that runs detention centers and correctional facilities. The GEO Group has faced repeated criticism for unsafe conditions, inadequate medical care, and profit motives tied to mass incarceration, particularly the detention of immigrants. Under Trump's administration, the company had been poised to earn hundreds of millions from expanded immigration enforcement. Bondi acknowledged she had lobbied for them, and repeated that she would consult with ethics officials if cases involving them came before the Department of Justice. But the question wasn't just about formal recusal processes, it was about trust. If the Department of Justice is supposed to be the nation's impartial enforcer of the law, can its leader have such deep ties to industries that profit from policies they might be asked to evaluate or enforce? Throughout the hearing, a pattern emerged. On some of the most critical questions about the legitimacy of an election, about presidential overreach, about political violence, and about conflicts of interest, Bondi's answers were couched, cautious, and often incomplete. Supporters might call this political savvy, critics would call it evasion. Either way, the effect was the same. The public was left guessing where she truly stands. The stakes of this confirmation go far beyond one person's career. The Attorney General isn't just another cabinet member. They are the nation's top law enforcement official, charged with defending the Constitution, even when it means confronting the president who appointed them. That role demands a willingness to put the law above politics, to make decisions that might end careers, but protect the democratic process. Bondi's track record in the hearing suggested a nominee deeply aware of the political risks of taking firm stances. Her careful wording and reliance on "I'd have to review the details" responses shielded her from alienating key political allies, but also kept her from making commitments that might reassure skeptics about her independence. When the hearing touched on Trump's fined 11,780 votes call, her refusal to outright condemn it raised the question of whether she was protecting a former boss or simply refusing to pass judgment without hearing every word. On the January 6 pardons question, her avoidance of a clear stance signaled either a strategic hedge or an unwillingness to alienate a segment of the Republican base that still views those rioters as political prisoners. And when it came to her lobbying ties, Her repeated pledge to consult with ethics officials offered a process answer rather than a personal conviction. For viewers watching this unfold, the optics were as telling as the content. Bondi's tone was calm, her words deliberate, her demeanor controlled. But politics isn't just about composure, it's about trust. And in a moment when the Department of Justice's independence is already under scrutiny, every sidestep becomes part of a larger narrative about whether political loyalty trumps constitutional duty. The public often hears that confirmation hearings are more about performance than substance, and this one certainly had its share of theater. There were moments of direct challenge, subtle digs about political loyalty, and a careful dance between answering questions and avoiding damaging soundbites. But beneath the spectacle, the stakes remained deadly serious. This wasn't about whether Pam Bondi is a capable lawyer. Her legal skills aren't in doubt. It was about whether she would be an attorney general who serves the Constitution first, or one who bends to political pressure. It was about whether past ties to billion-dollar corporations and foreign governments could influence decisions that should be made solely in the public interest. And it was about whether in a moment of crisis, she would be willing to stand alone against a president who demands loyalty over law. Some will see her performance as a master class in political navigation, giving away nothing, avoiding unforced errors, and keeping all options open. Others will see it as a red flag, a sign that when clarity is needed most, the answers might be buried in careful phrasing and procedural deflections. In the end, the hearing left the public with more questions than answers. Is Bondi truly committed to defending democratic institutions, or is she positioning herself to survive in a political landscape that punishes independence? Is she hedging because she sees herself as a bridge between factions, or because taking a stand would end her influence before it begins? Those questions matter, not just for the people in that Senate chamber, but for every American whose rights and freedoms depend on an impartial system of justice. An attorney general who can't give clear answers about the most fundamental principles of democracy risks undermining the very foundation of the role, and that's why this hearing matters. It's not just about Bondi's future. It's about the future of the Justice Department, the balance of power, and the message sent to every future official about whether political survival is more important than constitutional duty. So what do you think? Is Pam Bondi showing the caution of a seasoned political survivor, or is she dodging the truth to protect powerful interests? Drop your thoughts below, and if you found this breakdown worth your time, hit that subscribe button because the next deep dive is even more explosive than this one.